When my son told me I wouldn't be welcome at his house for Christmas, I smiled, got in my car, and made a single call. By New Year's, he had already paid off his mortgage, and that was just the beginning of my plan. Justice had to be restored and arrogance had to be punished. You won't believe what I did next. Before continuing, subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening from in the comments. I might make my famous turkey this year, I said, settling deeper into Michael's leather chair. Same one, with the sage filling your mom used to love. Remember how she always said it was better than her grandma's? The words hung in the warm air, mingling with the scent of Isabella's expensive vanilla candles. Michael moved to my side, his wedding ring catching the light from the 13-foot Christmas tree. Something in his posture changed. His shoulders shrugged as if he were preparing for a blow. Dad, unfortunately, you won't be welcome here for Christmas. The words hit me like a physical impact. I blinked, sure I had heard wrong. What do you mean? Why wouldn't I be welcome? Michael couldn't meet my gaze. His gaze was fixed on the marble table, the same one I helped him choose last spring when Isabella decided her old furniture wasn't sophisticated enough. Isabella's parents are coming, and they'd rather you weren't there. My hands got cold. They prefer. It's easier this way, Dad. You know how your family is about traditions. They have their own way of doing things. His voice grew smaller with each word, as if shrinking within himself. I looked at the living room, at the silk curtains I paid for when Isabella complained about privacy, the hardwood floors that came out of my second mortgage, the ceiling molding that maxed out my credit card. Every corner of that house bore my fingerprints, my sacrifice, my love for my son. His own way, I repeated slowly. And what is that way, Michael? He shuddered. Michael, he shuddered. Dad, please don't make it any harder than it already is. Through the kitchen archway, I saw Isabella's new KitchenAid mixer, the professional one she insisted on buying for her holiday baking phase that lasted exactly 3 weeks. $2,000 of my money, probably used twice since October. Where will I spend Christmas then? The question came out softer than I intended. Michael's face fell. Maybe you could, I don't know, visit Aunt Rosa. Or we could do something the weekend after. The weekend after. As if Christmas were just another date that could be rescheduled for convenience. I stood up, my knees protesting after 8 years of carrying this weight alone. I see. Dad, wait. But I was already heading for the door. I flipped through family photos where my face grew smaller and more distant in each frame. Through the closet that held Isabella's 1,000 coats. My hand rested on the knob, solid and cold beneath my palm. Son, I said without turning around, tell Isabella's parents, Merry Christmas. The December air hit me in the face like a slap as I walked toward my truck. Behind me, I heard Michael say my name once, and then the soft click of the door closing. Final, absolute. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, the engine off, watching the Christmas lights flicker in the windows of houses where I would never be welcome. My phone vibrated, probably Michael trying to calm things down with empty promises and borrowed blame. I didn't answer. Instead, I turned the key and drove into the darkness, leaving behind the warm glow of the house I bought. But that would never belong to me. The heater hummed against the December chill as I cruised through the familiar streets on my way home. South Hills stretched out around me, every corner holding reminders of the man I used to be, the one who believed family was everything, the one who would give his last dollar to see his son smile. That man was a fool. I stopped at the light at 29th and Grand, watching a young father load Christmas presents into his SUV. Her children pressed their faces against the window, fogging the glass with their excited breath. Once upon a time, that had been Michael and me before Isabella. Before I became nothing more than an ATM with uncomfortable emotions. The numbers started rolling in my head like a broken slot machine. $2,800 each month for 5 years. My calculator had given up last spring when I finally added up the total. $140,000. More money than Maria and I had ever saved for retirement. Lost. Just lost. I pressed the accelerator harder than necessary when the light turned green. The truck responded with a growl that matched my mood. 5th Street. There I had refinanced my house. Our house. Thoughts, Maria's and mine, to cover the down payment on hers. The bank officer looked at me with pity that I didn't recognize at the time. Are you sure about this, Mr. Flores? You're putting a lot at risk for someone else's investment. Someone else's investment? Not my son's future, not my family's safety. Someone else's investment? Lincoln Street, the bank where I applied for a second mortgage when Michael lost his job 2 years ago. It'll only be temporary, Dad. Just until I get back on my feet. Isabella stood behind him, a $700 purse slung over her shoulder, nodding sympathetically as she mentally calculated how much my desperation was worth. Nothing. As it turned out, my desperation was worthless to them. I pulled into my driveway, the cracked concrete beyond repair as every dollar disappeared into his perfect suburban fantasy. The porch light was flickering, another repair due. Inside, the house felt hollow without Maria's laughter, without the warmth of family gatherings that would never return. My phone rang as I fumbled with my keys, the shrill tone bouncing off the empty walls. Isabella's name flashed across the screen, probably to explain why she wasn't good enough for her parents' delicate sensibilities. Perfect. I've been waiting for this conversation for 5 years. I answered on the fourth ring, letting her wait long enough to wonder if I would do it. Dennis? Isabella's voice dripped with false sweetness, the same tone she used when asking me to cover the water bill or the property taxes. I heard about the little misunderstanding with Michael. Misunderstanding? I leaned against the kitchen counter, still wearing my coat. I don't think there's any misunderstanding, Isabella. You've made your position very clear. Look, I know this seems harsh, but you have to understand my parents' perspective. They're very traditional people. Well, they expect a certain atmosphere during the holidays. A certain atmosphere, I repeated. A pause. I heard shopping bags rustling in the background, probably spending money that should have gone to paying the mortgage. Money that, apparently, was my responsibility. Well, they're not used to your kind of cooking. All that spicy Mexican food and loud music. And frankly, Dennis, they're polite people. They expect conversations about current affairs, literature, art, you know. The words hit harder than a fist. 8 years of biting my tongue, swallowing insults for Michael's sake, pretending not to notice how he looked at me like I was an indentured servant. My kind of cooking. My voice remained calm and controlled. You mean the food you ate every Sunday for 3 years when you had no money? The tamales you said reminded you of your grandmother? That was different. We appreciated it back then, but now with my parents. Now, with your parents, you can't allow the Mexican peasant to embarrass them at your elegant dinner table. The false sweetness disappeared. Don't be dramatic, Dennis. Oh no, this isn't about race. It's about class. My father graduated summa cum laude from Washington State University. My mother speaks 4 languages. They spend their summers in the Hamptons. What could you possibly contribute to a dinner conversation? Stories about laying tiles? Heat flooded my chest, but I kept my voice firm. I built a business from scratch after your husband's grandfather died. I've employed over 50 people. I've paid more in taxes than your father earned in his best year. Money isn't everything, Dennis. Upbringing matters. Education matters. And frankly, Maria understood her place better than you do. The line fell completely silent. She had crossed the line. The limit I didn't even know existed until she stepped on it with her designer heels. What did you say about my wife? I'm just saying that she knew how to fit in better. She didn't cause any problems. She understood that there were places that weren't for her. My hand tightened around the phone until my knuckles turned white. Mary had more class in a single finger than all your blood in 100 generations. Oh, please. She was a lucky house cleaner. At least she had the good sense to keep quiet about it. Isabella. My voice lowered to something I didn't even recognize. I want you to listen very carefully. This conversation is over. No more pretending to be family. You can't just, it's over, I repeated, and hung up. I placed the phone carefully on the counter, my hands surprisingly steady. Around me, the kitchen felt different, smaller, but somehow cleaner, as if a weight had been lifted from the air itself. I went to my desk in the corner and pulled out the manila folder I'd been avoiding for months. Bank statements, mortgage papers, 5 years of automatic transfers that had left me high and dry while they lived like kings. It was time to stop the bleeding. Part 4. The first decision. Cancel the mortgage. The documents were scattered on my kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. 5 years of bank statements, each showing the same automatic transfer. $2,800 on the 15th of each month disappearing from my account into theirs. A paper trail of my own stupidity. I took out my calculator and started adding. The first year, $33,600. The second, another $33,600. By the third year, I had stopped buying new clothes. By the fourth year, I had started shopping at discount supermarkets. This year, the fifth, I was eating peanut butter sandwiches to make ends meet. $143,400, not counting the down payment. Not counting the times I covered her utility bills when Isabella's shopping addiction got out of control. Not counting the new roof, the landscaping, the furniture that was essential to their lifestyle. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the numbers until they blurred. Maria's life insurance money, my retirement savings, the college fund we had started for grandchildren who, it seemed, would never let me see. Everything gone. Dumped into a house where he wasn't even welcome for Christmas dinner. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts until I found the bank number. The automated system offered me options in English and Spanish. How thoughtful. How helpful for people like me. Customer service, this is Jennifer. How can I help you today? Well, I need to cancel an automatic transfer, I said, my voice as firm as I'd had in years. Of course, sir. I'll need your account number and some verification information. I recited the numbers, listening to the keys clicking in the background. Professional, efficient, and without judgment about why a 62-year-old man was canceling payments that were likely his son's mortgage. I see the transfer you're referring to, Mr. Flores. $2,800 a month to Wells Fargo. Account ending in 7,423. How long have you been making this transfer? 5 years. The words tasted bitter. And you want to cancel it with immediate effect? I looked around my kitchen. The old appliances I couldn't replace, the walls that needed painting, the windows that let in cold air because I'd spent the repair money on someone else's castle. Effective immediately, I confirmed. Oh, the transfer has been canceled. Is there anything else I can help you with today? No, I said, surprised at how good the word felt. No, that's all. I hung up and sat in the sudden silence of my house. Outside, the December darkness settled over Spokane. My Christmas lights twinkled in windows where families gathered without conditions, without judgment, without needing to hide who they were. For the first time in 5 years, next month's budget would balance. For the first time since Maria died, I could fix the porch light, buy some decent food, maybe even take a vacation. I gathered the bank statements, the mortgage papers, all the evidence of my generosity. I walked to the fireplace, lit a match, and watched as 5 years of martyrdom turned to ash. The fire felt warm on my face, warmer than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed with a text message, probably from Michael apologizing, or from Isabella, needing money for something essential like new pillows. I didn't check it. Instead, I poured myself a glass of the good whiskey, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion that never seemed to come. That night was already special enough. I raised my glass to the empty room, to the picture of Maria on the mantelpiece, to the man I used to be, and the man I was becoming. A Merry Christmas to me, I said, and I meant it. Part 5, Isabella's Provocation. The next morning came crisp and clear, the December light streaming through my kitchen windows as I enjoyed my second cup of coffee. For the first time in years, I wasn't calculating how much money would disappear from my account in 3 days. Freedom tasted better than the Colombian blend I had finally been allowed to buy. My phone rang at exactly 10:47 a.m. Isabella's name flashed across the screen like a warning label. Dennis. His voice carried that familiar tone of barely concealed impatience. I need you to pick up my parents from the Spokane airport. Their flight from Portland arrives at 2:00. I carefully put my cup down, watching the steam spiral toward the ceiling. Isabella, did you forget our conversation yesterday? Look, whatever that was, we should focus on practical matters now. Dang it. My parents need transportation and you're the only one who has time during the day. The audacity was astonishing. Less than 24 hours after telling me I wasn't worthy of sharing Christmas dinner with his family, he expected me to act as his personal chauffeur. And you're asking me because that's what family does, Dennis. They help each other. His voice edged with irritation. Besides, let's be honest, you're not my rival, you're too weak to be my rival, so get in your truck and go pick them up. There it was, the final insult wrapped in an order. Which airline? I asked quietly. Alaska Air Flight 447. They'll be at baggage claim Carousel 3, and Dennis, they're waiting for someone who can handle your luggage properly. Don't make us look bad. I could hear her nails tapping against something hard. Probably her granite countertop, the same one I paid for when she decided laminate wasn't suitable for her fancy dinner parties. Of course, I said, I'll take care of everything. Good. And dress decently. Maybe with that blue shirt you wore to Michael's graduation. They noticed those things. The line went dead. He didn't even say thank you. I leaned back in my chair staring at the blank phone screen. 2:00 p.m. Flight 447 Carousel 3. I looked up at the clock above the sink. 10:52 a.m. Plenty of time. I poured myself another cup of coffee, added an extra spoonful of sugar, and opened yesterday's newspaper to the crossword puzzle I hadn't finished. 7 horizontal. Delayed gratification. 12 letters. The answer would come to me eventually. Part 6, the airport trap, at 2:15 p.m. I was settling into my favorite chair with a fresh cup of Earl Grey and the Sunday edition of the Spokane Review. Yesterday's crossword puzzle lay completed on my coffee table. Delayed gratification had been postponement. My phone vibrated against the wooden surface. Isabella's name, again. I let it ring. The December sun streamed in through my living room windows, warming the space where I'd spent so many lonely nights counting the cost of my generosity. Today, the silence felt different, earned, intentional. 2:47 p.m., the phone vibrated again. This time I could see the preview of his message. Dad, where are you? My parents are... I turned the phone face down and returned to the sports section. The Seahawks had lost again. Some things never change. By 3:30, my phone had vibrated 6 times. I'd already finished the newspaper, made a second pot of tea, and started organizing the odds and ends drawer on my kitchen table. Amazing what you could accomplish when you weren't running around serving people who considered you their personal bellhop. The 7th call came in at 3:45. Instead of Isabella's name, I saw an unknown number. Her parents had probably borrowed someone's phone at the airport. I let that one ring too. Outside, a neighbor hung Christmas lights on his porch. His children ran around the yard with the boundless energy that only December afternoons could bring. Normal families doing normal things. No one stranded anywhere, waiting for someone who would never arrive. 4:15 p.m., my phone started ringing and wouldn't stop. Isabella, then the unknown number, then Isabella again. The buzzing became constant, like an angry wasp trapped against glass. I walked to my kitchen and unplugged my landline from the wall. Then I turned my cell phone off completely. Perfect silence. I made myself a grilled cheese sandwich and heated a can of tomato soup, a comfort food I hadn't allowed myself in months because every dollar of the purchase had gone to sustaining her lifestyle. The cheese melted perfectly golden. The soup steamed in my favorite mug. Outside, the winter sun was already beginning to set, casting long shadows across my backyard. Somewhere in the city, 3 people were probably standing in an airport parking lot, arguing over taxi fare and wondering how their personal servant had the audacity to leave them stranded. That thought made my soup taste even better. By 5 o'clock, I'd already eaten dinner, loaded the dishwasher, and was considering which movie to watch. It had been years since I'd had an entire afternoon to myself, unconcerned with emergency calls, pleading for money, or last-minute favors. I was reaching for the remote when someone started banging on my front door, not knocking, but pounding. The kind of aggressive hammering that rattled the frame and heralded pure fury. I set my tea aside and walked slowly toward the sound, already knowing exactly who I would find on the other side. The knocking intensified as I approached, each one more violent than the last. Through the peephole, I saw 3 figures huddled on my small porch like wolves circling their prey. I opened the door to find Cody Jenkins' red face inches from mine. "What the hell is wrong with you?" Oh. He yelled, shoving my shoulder and entering my living room uninvited. We waited in that damn airport for over 3 hours. Catherine followed him, her usually perfect hair disheveled, her lips pressed into a thin line of pure hatred. "This is completely unacceptable from someone your age, Dennis Canis." Absolutely barbaric. Isabella walked in behind, her designer coat wrinkled, her makeup smeared. You humiliated us. Do you have any idea what you did? My parents had to pay a $40 taxi ride because you decided, get out of my house. My voice cut through their chorus of fury like a blade through silk. Indeed. They stopped in their tracks, surprised by the steel in my tone. Excuse me, Cody's face went from red to purple. You have no right to give orders around here, buddy. Not after what you did today. This is my house, I said quietly, without moving from the door, and I want you to leave. Now. Catherine stepped forward, her voice dripping with the condescension honed by decades of looking down on people like me. Dennis, you clearly don't understand the magnitude of your mistake. My husband has connections all over this city. Business connections, social connections. You can't treat people like us like this and expect. This was a lesson for you, I interrupted, holding her gaze. A lesson about your excessive arrogance and your mistreatment of people you consider inferior. Isabella's mouth dropped open. A lesson? Who do you think you are, teaching someone anything? You're nobody. I'm someone who finally stopped being your personal bank account and your taxi service. I stepped aside and opened the door wider. The lesson is over. You may go. Cody pointed a finger at me, but didn't dare touch me. You have no idea who you're messing with, man. I've been in this city longer than you've been breathing. I know people, important people, people who can make your life very, very difficult. Is that a threat, Mr. Jenkins? It's a promise. His voice lowered to a menacing whisper. Do you think abandoning elderly people at an airport is something you can do without consequences? You're about to learn how wrong you are. Catherine nodded, her smile sharp as glass. Indeed, Dennis, actions have consequences. And yours will be very public. Isabella pulled her father's arm. Dad, let's go. This pathetic old man isn't worth our time. They left my house like a defeated army, but Cody turned around at the doorstep. You're going to regret it, he said. I guarantee it. I closed the door behind them and locked it with a satisfying click. Through the window, I watched them get into their rental car, still arguing among themselves as they drove off into the December darkness. The house felt cleaner without them, as if their presence had left a stain that was only just now being lifted, but their final words echoed in the sudden silence. Public consequences, important people, connections. I returned to my living room and lifted my tea, still lukewarm in its cup. For the first time in this whole mess, I felt something that could have been concern, but it was dominated by something much stronger. Anticipation. 3 days later, I was enjoying my morning coffee and flipping through the Spokane Review when I saw my own face staring back at me from page 3. The headline read, "A Spokane businessman abandons elderly couple at airport during Christmas storm." My hands froze around the coffee cup. There I was in black and white, an old photo from my company's website, probably 5 years old. Beneath it, a story that simultaneously chilled my blood and inflamed my anger. Cody and Catherine Jenkins, visiting their daughter for Christmas, were stranded at Spokane International Airport for more than 4 hours Sunday when family member Dennis Flores didn't show up for a prearranged pickup. The couple, both in their early 50s, waited in frigid temperatures while a winter storm warning was issued for the region. Winter storm warning. It was 52 degrees and sunny. We couldn't believe someone would abandon us like that, said Cody Jenkins, a retired former banker. We called repeatedly, but Mr. Flores never answered. We were forced to take an expensive taxi in dangerous conditions. At our age, this kind of treatment isn't just inconsiderate, it's dangerous. The article continued with quotes about my alleged pattern of erratic behavior and concerns about my mental state. Cody had painted himself and Catherine as helpless victims of a cruel old man who had suddenly lost his mind without provocation. None of the Christmas dinner I wasn't invited to. None of Isabella's demands or her years of financial exploitation. A quick search of local business directories confirmed my suspicions. 3 mutual connections between Cody and Patricia's editor. The story hadn't appeared on its own. It had been carefully planted. Amateur work. I opened a new document and began to write. Not a response to their media attack, but something much better. A timeline. 5 years of financial support documented with bank statements, receipts, and canceled checks. The down payment on our house, $47,000 on my home equity loan. The kitchen renovation when Isabella decided I needed granite, $18,000 on my credit card. 60 monthly mortgage payments of $2,800 each, $168,000 and counting. $250,000, more than I'd spent on myself in the past decade. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Probably Isabella trying a new angle. I ignored it and continued working. By nightfall, I had everything organized in a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. Bank statements, receipts, photos downloaded from his social media showing purchases I'd financed, a printout of the newspaper article with my handwritten notes documenting every lie and distortion. I looked at my wall calendar. December 24th was circled in red. Not because it was Christmas, but because it was the perfect day to do justice. According to Isabella's Facebook events, they were hosting a Christmas dinner for 12 people. Family, friends, neighbors, members of her social circle. The kind of people who read the Spokane Review and formed opinions based on what they saw there. The kind of people who deserve to know the truth. I closed my laptop and walked to the kitchen, where I'd left my good camera, the one I'd bought years ago, to document the work of my business. Time to put it to work documenting something very different. Tomorrow would be Christmas Eve. Tomorrow, Cody Jenkins and his family were going to learn what happened when you declared war on someone who could fight. Christmas Eve morning dawned gray and cold, the kind of winter day in Spokane that made you grateful for a warm house and family gatherings. Too bad I wouldn't be welcome at either, but I had other plans. I laid out my evidence like a lawyer preparing a trial. Bank statements organized by year. Each monthly payment highlighted in yellow. The chronologically arranged receipts showed the pattern of my support for his lifestyle. Printed photos from his social media. Isabella's new jewelry. Her vacation photos. The expensive Christmas decorations that currently adorned the house. I had helped pay for all of that, and now I had it copied 12 times, one for each dinner guest. The newspaper article was at the top of each packet. My notes in red ink were visible in the margins. Lie written next to Cody's statements about dangerous weather. False. Next to the claim about my supposedly erratic behavior highlighted in yellow appeared the omitted context. 5 years of financial support. I dressed carefully in my best suit, the navy blue I'd worn to Maria's funeral, ironed and ready for a different kind of goodbye. Today I was saying goodbye to the man who had been a doormat to his family. Tonight I would be someone who commanded respect. At 6:30 p.m., I loaded my briefcase with the evidence packages and drove to Kendall Yards. His house glowed with warm lights, cars filling the driveway and lining the street. Oh, and through the front windows, I could see figures moving in the dining room. Isabella playing hostess in the house my money had helped them buy. I parked across the street and looked at my watch. 6:45. Perfect timing. Late enough that everyone was seated at dinner. Early enough that they were still on the main course, no easy escape for anyone. The front door was unlocked. Of course it was. Isabella loved to brag about how safe their neighborhood was, how they didn't need to worry about security, unlike people in rougher areas. I walked in quietly, the warm air hitting my face along with the sounds of laughter and conversation coming from the dining room. And then Catherine said, "But dear, that's not how we do things in our family." Everyone laughed. Our family, after everything they'd done to exclude me from it. I walked into the dining room with my briefcase in hand, 12 faces turning toward me with expressions ranging from shock to horror. Isabella froze, her wine glass halfway to her lips. Michael's face paled. Cody and Catherine looked like they'd seen a ghost. "Good evening, everyone," I said calmly, placing my briefcase on her marble sideboard. "I hope you don't mind me joining your Christmas celebration." Isabella was the first to recover her voice. "Dennis, this is completely inappropriate. You need to leave immediately." "Actually," I replied, opening my briefcase and taking out the first packet of papers, "I think your guests deserve to know who really paid for this dinner, this house, and this lifestyle you boast about." A woman I didn't recognize, probably one of Catherine's charity friends, leaned in curiously. "What are you talking about, Isabella?" "He's having some kind of episode," Isabella said quickly. "Michael, call someone." But I was already moving around the table, placing a packet of documents in front of each guest. "Here are the bank records," I said conversationally. 5 years of financial support. Just in mortgage payments, $168,000, plus the down payment, renovations, furniture, appliances, everything you see around you. The room fell silent, except for the sound of paper being shuffled as 12 people examined the evidence. I watched their faces change as they absorbed the numbers, the dates, the undeniable proof of my generosity and their deception. "This is," a man began, but stopped, looking at a bank statement. "Outrageous," the woman across the table concluded. "Isabella, why didn't you tell us about this?" Isabella's perfect composure was beginning to crack. "It's more complicated than it looks. Dennis offered to help us. We never asked him." "Actually," I interrupted, taking the article out of the newspaper, "let's talk about what they did ask me for and what they told the press about me." The temperature in the room seemed to drop by 10 degrees C. I placed copies of the newspaper article on the table, watching as guests recognized my photo from the defamatory report that had appeared 3 days earlier. "Now," I said, my voice clear in the sudden silence, "let's talk about the real manipulators in this family." Cody's face had gone from red to ashen. Catherine sat rigid in her chair, her glass forgotten in her hand. "Mr. Jenkins here used his banking connections to plant this story," I continued, pointing at the newspaper. "Notice how I'm portrayed as unstable and dangerous, abandoning poor elderly people in a freezing climate." A gray-haired man in an expensive sweater looked up from the article. "Cody, what's this about?" The weather was 52 degrees and sunny. I said before Cody could answer. And they weren't stranded tourists. They were Isabella's parents arriving for the Christmas dinner I'd been excluded from because I wasn't good enough for their company. Catherine finally spoke. "That's not it. They never said what, Catherine?" I pulled out my phone, where I had screenshots of several of Isabella's social media posts. That I was too low class for her parents? That my Mexican food and working class conversation would embarrass them in front of their educated friends? One of Catherine's charity friends shifted uncomfortably. "Catherine, surely not. He's twisting everything," Cody muttered, but his voice lacked conviction. "This man has serious mental health issues, the stress of age, financial problems. Financial problems?" I almost laughed. "Mr. Jenkins, I've been supporting your daughter and son-in-law on almost $3,000 a month for 5 years. The only financial problems here are the ones you're about to have." I addressed the entire table. "These people took $200,000 from me while insulting me behind my back. They manipulated my son against me, banned me from family gatherings, and when I finally stood up for myself, they tried to destroy my reputation at the newspaper." Michael spoke for the first time, his voice barely a whisper. "Dad, I didn't know about the newspaper." "Your wife did know," I said calmly, "and her parents orchestrated it. They made me into a villain for refusing to be their ATM and personal chauffeur." The social dynamics of the room were shifting like tectonic plates. I could see it on the guests' faces. The slow realization that everything they'd been told about that evening's hosts was built on lies. "This is unconscionable," said an elderly woman wearing pearls looking at the bank statements. "Cody, how could you allow your daughter to take advantage of this man's generosity and then publicly attack him when he stopped funding her?" Cody's carefully maintained facade was crumbling. "You don't understand the whole situation." "I understand perfectly," the woman interrupted. "This man has been supporting your family financially while you treated him like a servant. And when he finally said no, you tried to ruin his reputation." Catherine's voice came out strangled. "He abandoned us at the airport." "After you told me I wasn't welcome at Christmas dinner because my presence would be inappropriate for your parents," I said calmly. "After 5 years of paying your bills while you looked down on me for my background and education." The silence was deafening. 12 people stared at Cody and Catherine with expressions ranging from disgust to shame for having been associated with them. Isabella made one last desperate attempt to control the narrative. "Please, everyone, this is a family matter that's gotten out of hand." "No," I said firmly. "This stopped being a family matter when you made it public. When you used the newspaper to attack my character. When you decided my reputation was acceptable collateral damage for your pride." I looked around the table at faces I didn't know, but who now knew exactly who I was. I wanted you all to know the truth before you read about Dennis Flores in the newspaper again, because you will, but next time it will be the real story. I closed my briefcase and straightened my tie. Enjoy the rest of your dinner. It'll be the last one I'll pay for. As I headed for the door, I heard the storm breaking behind me. Voices raised in accusations, questions demanding answers, the sound of a carefully constructed social facade crumbling. It was the most beautiful Christmas music I had ever heard.